Welcome to a Canna Convo episode of my highly enlightened podcast, syndicated by Ganjapreneur. I'm your host, John Puro. Now, before we get to a great interview, I want to note that any opinions I express are my own and not those of my law firm, Lumora Law, or my cannabis IP licensing agency, Pacololo Capital Corp. Now, as always, I want to do a quick prayer to the video chat gods. May our Wi-Fi connections remain sturdy, all dogs and children remain quiet, and may Amazon Prime another time. Amen. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing Christine Apple, the founder and CEO of Grön. Thank you so much for joining us on the pod.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here today.
All right, awesome. So with that, right down to the questions. So I always like to ask, of all the experience and skills that you brought from your work history, and as an interesting journey, I've learned about it, into the cannabis industry, which do you think was the most helpful and why?
So I talk about this some, but I'm not sure if everybody knows. But my previous life, I was an architect. Now I'm still an architect, but I refer to myself as a recovering architect. But I was trained to think three-dimensionally. And it's a way of thinking that I think has been really helpful as I've transitioned into the cannabis space. And I say that because when I came into the space, and even now, right, it's not fully developed. We're building this industry as we go. And so it's not that different than building a building or building, kind of a community of, and so there's the foundation, there's the structure, there's all the different aspects that are being built. And it's the how you think three-dimensionally about where we're building things and laying out the structure and setting your budgets and doing your timelines and staying on task, and not getting far ahead of yourself, that I really think has from the onset has been really helpful. Also working with the jurisdictions, helping both the states kind of fundamentally at a basic level early on in Oregon with understanding the rules, reading between the lines of the rules, and the intention behind the rules, and then being able to meet them while still driving the industry forward. And so, I think that's really been perhaps the most impactful. I'd love to say that my design background impacted where we are, and maybe it does, but less so on the design side and probably more on the practicality side.
I think when it comes down to, right, you're saying thinking three-dimensionally, so you're thinking about, all the different angles, right, with everything that you do as you're trying to grow a business. So I can understand why you'd say that that's more, certainly more expansive than just specifically anything going on the design of your products, which are lovely, by the way, every single one I've interacted with. So I appreciate that. And it's interesting you say that, helping the regulators is an important thing in what we do, right? Because, they're also learning as they go along. So it's interesting what you say in terms of helping kind of guide them. And I say that as someone coming from New York and New Jersey that are much, newer down that pathway than, Oregon. So I definitely appreciate that. So now, what advice, regarding leadership would you give to other leaders in the industry besides thinking three-dimensionally? What have you learned as you went along here?
Listen, don't talk, listen. That's probably a big one. The other thing I try to tell people, from the beginning, I created these products. I started this company in my basement, and I knew I don't make the products anymore, but I know how to make every single one of them. So I know how long it takes. I know what's involved. I know the steps. I know the ingredients. And really understanding the products and the process of what you're doing, I believe from leadership is critically important. Staying in tune as your company grows with how the process develops, whether you're, I'll be honest, I only know one sector. We are a food manufacturing company that happens to have a specific ingredient that makes us technically more regulated and a little bit more challenging. But that's really what we are, is we're a food manufacturing company that is in the cannabis sector. So it's really understanding that and leaning into, for us, was leaning into that. So the biggest piece of advice I can give people is to listen, to learn, and to really understand what your process is so that you can help hone it in and grow.
So as a leader, you're saying that, I guess there's a fine line between, say, micromanaging, right? But understanding every facet of what your company is doing at any given point, correct?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I don't know everything, but I do know enough to bring in people that are smarter than me as we've grown that can help us scale and get better. So for me, as I started the company, and then I was able to bring in other leaders underneath me that can help us progress and grow. And the industry is moving so fast. These companies are moving so fast. So you're never static. The minute that you get to something that it's good and you're like, yeah, we've got this, you're behind if you're not progressing to the next step and figuring out what's next. So it's this constant evolution of what's next and how are we building? What's the next product we're going to make? What are the new trends that are coming? The industry is just growing so quickly. I mean, when I started in cannabis 10 years ago, there was not distillate. We were using RSO, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't sophisticated testing. It was using RSO in chocolate bars and topping it with coffee beans to have bitter coffee mask the bitter RSO to make it taste better, right? So we've progressed. There wasn't CBD other than what was available in minute amounts, so it's the industry has progressed so drastically in 10 years, and it's just getting faster and faster.
So, as you said, you are a food manufacturing company, right? But one of the wrinkles of being in this regulated industry is that, I mean, you need to find manufacturing partners in different states, correct? You folks are not holding licenses
Oh no, we
outside
are.
of, you're holding
Yeah,
licenses. Got it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And that's an interesting aspect of the way we've developed. So we hold licenses in some states where we
Okay.
can. So we own licenses in Oregon, Missouri, and New York currently. And
Got
then
it.
we partner in our other states and we do what we call a reverse licensing model. So what we do is we come in with our people. So our employees are in every market that we're in. And we'll find partners there, licensed partners that have space that's underutilized. And we will lease that space from them. We will come in. Sometimes we'll build out a kitchen, or there might, be a kitchen, and we'll take over that space. We'll pay them a rent to operate under their license, and then we'll give them a small royalty fee for letting us operate under their license. So we have our own compliance team that works directly with their compliance team. And for the most part, it's worked exceptionally well. Particularly in markets that have vertical license structures where it doesn't make sense to have a where they don't offer production licenses. But that's
Yeah.
been something, again, as we've grown, we've found ways that we were able to operate and to grow our business and maintain the control.
Got it. Understood. So just out of curiosity, right? So for the states where you do need to partner with somebody, as you said,
Yeah.
in a reverse licensing model, are the things that, the indicators that you're looking for that there is underutilized space, essentially, that there's room for them to grow via a relationship with you? Or are there any other, things that you're particularly looking for in a partner?
Yeah, I mean, particularly when we look for a partner, because it is a license deal, there has to be not only mutual respect, but a mutual kind of trust that both companies have the compliance, the longevity, and the legs, right? Because there in either scenario, there's a compliance issue that could get you both in trouble if you're not careful. So we're proud partners with Curaleaf in a couple of markets in Pennsylvania, and we will be in New Jersey soon. We partnered in New Jersey with Ianthus, another MSO, currently, with Standard Wellness in Ohio, which has been really
Got
great,
it.
and the Flower Shop in Arizona.
Okay,
Yeah.
big entities are not,
Yes.
they're potentially very good partners, I guess, to a certain extent,
Yes.
as you said, in terms of longevity, also, and a guarantee in an uncertain industry that they're going to be there down the road, also,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Versus, one-off, manufacturers in particular states where there's a little bit less, certainty.
Correct.
Got it. Understood. So, what do you think are, in addition to the things that you said, some of the biggest factors in how your company has Grön over the years. Sorry, sorry.
I like the pun. I love that.
I
So,
couldn't I
okay,
couldn't help
so
myself.
it's great. I love it. Which is funny because Grön, which sounds like grew, but actually means green in Swedish. And I don't know if everybody knows that, but yeah, that really is the meaning of the word. I get asked that a lot. Um, so one of the biggest when I started this company, there was no money, right? So I started this with literally nothing, truly in my basement, and we didn't have the capacity to have money to go out and to buy licenses or to go out and to grow in large scale. So, and we came out of a market, Oregon, which is highly competitive and is a highly competitive in the early days with a lot of competition and not a lot of money. So we had to look for creative ways to be able to move into new markets, and that's where this reverse licensing model kind of came up. So we have honed it over the years, but it really has been a tremendous asset for our growth because it's capital light, right? So it's an asset light, low capital intensity way of growing. We're not spending a lot of money on buying licenses or buying buildings or leasing large buildings. And so for us, it was the way that made the most sense for our growth. Now, as the company has grown and we've developed and we've gotten larger, we're looking at things and saying, in this scenario, it makes more sense for us to just buy the license or develop a building or to do our own things. But for the past, 7, 8 years, that didn't make sense for the company. And that's something I'd advise everybody, right? You got to look at the scale of your business now. Don't bite off more than you can chew. We didn't actually take any capital investment until this past year. So we've self-funded every single thing that we've done off of the proceeds. The company has remained profitable and it's continued to grow from the beginning of time. We've run it very, very lean. And that level of growth has in some ways probably prevented us from growing faster than we might have. We didn't go to California when maybe we should have in 2017, because we didn't have the capital to do it. But in hindsight, it allowed us to get better, to hone our skills, to continue to grow and mature. And what we've seen is exponential growth in the past 3 years, as we've moved into really a top 5 player in our category, which has been really exciting.
No, I've seen the statistics in terms of the growth and how it, have you expanded? I mean, how many states are you currently in right now?
9 or 10, 9, I think,
Yeah,
right now. Yeah,
got it.
yeah. We'll have
And
Pennsylvania gets to see us next month. Yay,
okay.
Pennsylvania. Yeah, we're
Yes.
excited.
Well,
Yes,
hopefully, but we'll air it. You might be in Pennsylvania by the time we
I
air.
love it.
Little star disclaimer there. Us lawyers, love our
Yeah.
disclaimers. So I mean, it seems like you kind of, believe that to a certain extent. I like the expression "necessity is the mother of invention." Ever
Yes.
since I wrote an essay on
True.
it in 5th grade, and I like to say that we are an industry that lives on the marijuana margins, right? Because of not the ability, just the restrictions and regulations on us necessitate, as you said, constantly evolving,
Yeah.
right? Like you can't grow. This is an industry where it's adapt or die more than any other industry, that I'm aware of.
Agree.
So I appreciate what you're saying in terms of the journey. And I mean, you said that the growth has been exponential in the past couple of years. Is there something specific other than the fact that the markets that you've gone into and like how many you've been able to spread to now that you're, I guess, you have your business model refined and everything like that? Or are there other factors that contribute to that recent exponential growth?
I mean, there are. I mean, 100%. And some of that just comes with the credibility of being a large enough company to where you're able to demand the shelf space. And it takes time, right? I use this analogy all the time. Brands are really easy to make. They're just like babies. They're really hard to grow up into mature adults, and it takes a long time. And you can't give up. You've got to stay the course, and it takes a long time to get them to where they're self-sufficient and they're actually standing on their own. And we invested a lot of time. We kept developing products. We've continued to develop. Bringing out the Mega was a when we introduced that, and 2000, I think that was 2018. That was a pivotal moment for the company. There's been a lot of these that have kind of really changed the trajectory of our growth. Going to Missouri, that was a huge piece when we timed that very, very well and took over that market. We entered Missouri in 2022, I believe. And we own that market. We're in the very top position we have for years, and being in that position that in a large market like Missouri in the category gave us the credibility with some of these larger MSOs as we go into new markets. And so that, we've had to cut our teeth and prove ourselves with larger brands as we continue to take over shelf space. And Hoodie data shows us as the fastest growing edible company in the country right now. That's an exciting it's an exciting statistic. I look at it and I say that just means we have to work that much harder to continue to grow right now. So it's yeah.
But as you said, right? I mean, there's momentum, right? It carries itself, right? There's leverage as you get bigger and bigger. It opens up doors and snowballs, as you said. Now, one thing that actually popped into my head at our call is I think that you mentioned the mega, and I think that there's one thing I think that was impressed by your brand, kind of early on when I was first exposed to it was the product diversification. Right. Mm-hmm. And you guys were tinkering with minor cannabinoids, I feel very early compared to others. So I'm kind of curious to know, what you kind of learned along those lines and, some of the trends that you've seen in terms of consumer appetite, pun intended, for your products.
Yeah, sure. So there's been, I love this question because it's kind of, again, it's what set us apart and helped us kind of jump ahead at different moments. And the Mega was probably the first pivotal product that really shifted things for us. And that was in 2018. And we really created the single serve category. It's funny, I can't remember if it was BDSA or Hoodie. I think it was BDSA back then that came to us and said, what are you guys doing? Because you actually have created a different category here with single serve. And at the time, when Sam, our chief revenue officer, came to me and said, Christine, I have an idea. And this was Oregon days, but when there was compression and the market was just tanking, and he said, I've got this idea. Let's come up with a higher product, single serve, it's still 10 servings, but we can bring it out at a lower price point. Consumers, I'm in the stores and I see what consumers are looking for, and they're looking for a value option at the register that they can get that's under $10 at the time. And I said, there's no way it's going to cannibalize our other products, our higher margin products. People won't buy our other stuff. And then what are we going to do? We're just going to become a value brand, and that everything's going to swirl. And he said, Christine, you got to trust me. Give me a shot. And he was right. And what it did was it levitated the entire brand up. People ended up not just buying more megas, they bought more pearls too. So the brand continued to grow. So that was number one. The second thing was minor cannabinoids. When we started looking at CBN, there was CBN on the market, but primarily in California, but in really small amounts. So Kiva had it. I think it was like a 10-to-1 at the time. It was really expensive. I think it was $25 a gram or something. We looked at it and we said, let's R&D, let's find the formula that we believe works the very best. And for us, that was a 1-to-1-to-1. It's a 1-to-1-to-1 with THC, CBN, and CBD. And we did tests, we sent it out, people loved it. And, I said, let's do it, right? We're going to eat the cost on this, and we're going to take a gamble that the costs are going to go down on this input, and it's going to work. And to this day, that's our best selling ratio. We have it in 3 different products. It's over 30% of our revenue for the company. That one formula, it is so effective. It's a sleep formula, and it's fantastic. And it was a safe bet. It was a good bet. Costs have come down. It's a great high margin product. And we've continued to look at other things. Our latest thing that we really leaned into is rosin. Our regular pearl offerings and mega offerings are made with rosin, but it's a rosin blend in most markets. So it's a blend of distillate and rosin. We've just recently come out with a line of solely rosin products. So there's absolutely no distillate in there. It's 100% rosin. We've got 3 pearls and 3 megas that we've come out, and they are absolutely incredible. And the results that we're seeing in the markets as they come on are just phenomenal. So, I think there's a lot of trends in where consumers are looking. But you got to be in market. You've got to be, you got to be a large national company, this industry, you still have to drive locally. This is still a localized industry. So in Missouri, we're a Missouri company. In New York, we're a New York company. And we're looking at all the trends that are happening locally and then trying to respond on a local level with our local teams. And we're able to do that because we're operating in all these companies. And I think that's the advantage to our model. And it becomes really hard when you're in a traditional licensing model and you're not able to manage that. But anyway, I'm rambling on, but that's
No, I
really
mean, there's
what we lean
a lot
into.
to unpack there. And I will share a personal anecdote that your, the one-to-one-to-one edibles, my sister swears by them. She said that they are the most effective thing that she's ever used for her sleep. So thank you for helping my sister sleep. Next, I mean, talking about, the mega and, kind of the trends where you see going. And also, I think it ties on the rosin to a certain extent. I think that at first, I also had this similar viewpoint, I think, as you did, right? When, your teammate came to you with the idea that who wants something that's so strong, right? Isn't that something that there
Yes.
could be a downside to, right? What if, someone has a negative experience or anything? But then I just realized that by the nature of the good that we're putting out there, people build tolerance. And so, right, as tolerance builds, if people aren't taking, tolerance breaks or anything, that they need stuff that's stronger in order to
Yes.
achieve those same results, right? And so when we talk about that, I call them the connoisseurs, the very comfortable, repeat customers that you'll see again and again, right? They end up gravitating towards those products. They're not for the kind of curious, they're for the folks that want bang for their buck, being the other thing in terms of they need more, right, to get high. And so they're also more cost effective, those products, as you said, without cannibalizing your other products. They actually complemented them to a certain extent, I guess, because they were speaking to different consumers in different ways.
Yeah.
The podcast is proud to be sponsored by eBottles. If you're in the cannabis business, you know that quality packaging isn't just important, it's essential. That's where eBottles comes in. Whether you're just starting out or scaling up, eBottles offers proprietary, top-of-the-line packaging products built for cannabis. eBottles is the market leader for a good reason. They are experts in the field. 6 patents, 5 warehouse locations around the country, and a network of exceptional distributors. So get eBottles and grow boldly.
And then I'm curious to know your thoughts about why the rosin products are so, interesting, right? I think that people think, oh, edibles should taste a certain way. They should just taste pleasant in one way or another, right? But I believe that your rosin, products, those taste more like the actual plant, if I
do.
correct,
They do.
right? And so
Yeah.
is that a function of also catering to the connoisseurs who want
Yes.
that taste?
Yeah, it is. And I really do feel like just what you're talking about, what we're seeing trend wise is there's 2 channels, right? And they're diverting just a little bit. And so we have to be able to make products for both of them. There's the Can of Curious, which are, I mean, I still say I fall into that category. I'm a low dose person. We
Yep.
have a product offering that's a 10-to-1 tart cherry. So it's 2.5 milligrams of THC and 25 milligrams of CBN. It's a sleep aid. It won't get you high. You'll just sleep through the night. It's my favorite product. It's the product they made for me. It's a product that I would give any new person. I love it. And then we have higher dose stuff, and we're seeing the trend, just like what you said, of higher and higher and higher dose products. So in states like Missouri, there's no limit on the adult use market for high dose. So we are selling 1,000 milligrams. We're selling 10 packs of megas. We're selling 1,000 milligram chocolate bars. We don't have this on the market right now, but we're seeing even 3,000 milligram stuff. So it's getting maybe out of hand, but we're seeing a trend with higher and higher dose. And then we're also seeing a trend on new consumers that are coming into the market as cannabis continues to get more accepted. And I think it has a big role in that, as we're seeing that it's just more accepted and people are really gravitating towards it for sleep, anxiety, and pain. The rosin is a really interesting way of kind of bridging the gap between both of these. And I think there's a way, it's a different high than a distillate high. And I think it's a headier high. I think there's more plant flavor. If you do it correctly, it's delicious. And it's like having a really nice fine wine where you have lots of tannins, the flavor, and it lingers and it changes from cherry to different things. And I think that's the beauty of rosin, is you're getting this really developed plant flavor and plant effect. And it's I think it's an educated, doesn't mean that you have to be educated to have that product, but I think it's a really lovely product that is able to showcase what the plant offers, and to bring it out in an edible form is really exciting. I still think there's a really strong place for distillate edibles in the market. I think there's still a lot of people that don't want to taste it at all. There's a lot of people that don't want to trick their minds or trick their mothers or their grandmothers into not even thinking that they're taking cannabis, because in their minds there's still a stigma. And right now we're still trying to transition people, and we have a fiduciary duty to the world to create products that deliver positive experiences so that people will come back and try these cannabis products again. Every one of us, like every time, they may only do it one time. And so I think these different products, and we have to lean heavily on the bud tenders so we educate them, and just as all of us that are here right now to educate consumers. But yeah, I think rosin is that's the next thing. I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Now, I mean, you're talking about the consumer education and everything. Another thing that I recall, admiring, and you talked about, design earlier, is how you put that information on your packaging about the ratios, right? And the amounts of the THC by comparison to other things. I mean, for what you do, I mean, is that something you consider pretty pivotal, that it makes people more comfortable, I guess?
Yeah,
right?
we used to really lean into the ratios. So this is a 1-to-1-to-1, right? And this is like, we know what that means. Consumers don't know what that means. What they know is they want to sleep. So we've kind of pivoted and transitioned. We still have the ratios on there, but we're really doing is targeting the marketing towards what people are looking for. They're looking for sleep. They're looking for active. They're looking for focus. They're looking to calm. They're looking for pain relief. And so, we're introducing here in the next couple of months a third sleep offering to round out our 3 sleep offerings too. So we have our 1-to-1-to-1 blackberry, which is our most popular. And then in the other spectrum of sleep is the tart cherry that I spoke about earlier, which is a 10-to-1. And then we're bringing in a third, which will sit on either side of the bookends, which is a wild berry. And it is a 2-to-1 CBN THC. So that right there, it's another one. It's just slightly different, and for consumers that that are looking for maybe something else, I think it's a really popular ratio, and we're excited to launch that this year too. Now that one will be a distillate rosin blend. That's not a full rosin product. Our rosin products are they look different. The packaging is dark. They're electric. The colors are neon. The flavors are cool. They're, the flavors were designed specifically to complement the rosin. We worked with Head Change. They're just a fantastic producer. They're just artists out of Missouri. Very closely with them to design really the flavors, and we've done, if anybody's looking to learn more about the process of actually pressing rosin and what's involved, we've got a whole bunch of videos that we did, and background information on our social media and website about the production of rosin and how it's integrated into the edibles.
Got it. Now, to take a step back, I mean, what are a couple of other things, or I mean, or just one thing that, that you feel that you've learned in the industry on this journey, and I could be, specific important facts that you've learned about the segments of the industry, or just important points that you've, learned in some fashion.
You know, the biggest, it's not the biggest, but one thing I've learned is that the industry is smaller than we all think, and relationships are critically important. And a big piece of our growth has been our commitment to relationships and being a really good partner. And by that, I mean not just our licensed partner, but I mean partners to our retailers, being partners to the community, being partners to the consumers, and really just doing the right thing. I don't know if that's something I've learned from this industry, but I've never seen an industry that is so on a broader spectrum of good to bad, has so much in it. And it probably just because it's still so nascent, so new, right? And so it's maintaining our integrity and being honest, really solid partners that has given us a good reputation and helped us move forward, being good to the environment, being good to our people, being good to our partners. And while that sounds like something that's easy, this industry, it just feels like that's not always there. That's something this industry has really reminded me is how critically important integrity is. And I continue to think about it every day.
As I try to instill in my daughters, it always comes back to the golden rule, right? In the
That's
end,
right.
right?
Yeah,
As as hard as it could be sometimes, right? It always comes back to treating others like you want to be treated. Can you share, an anecdote about one time where you thought to yourself, heck yeah, we really nailed the landing on a hard one?
Yeah, I'm gonna. There's a few things. One would be the mega. The other
Yep.
is probably our launch in Missouri. We had no money launching in Missouri. We did not know if this was going to work. At the time when we launched in Missouri, it was medical. Adult use had not passed. We took a hard get, and this industry is not for the faint at heart. We've gotten really good at making safe bets now, and so we generally win on the bets we make. But that's a skill, right? You have to get good at that and at winning more than you lose. But we still make bad bets too, and the industry, you just don't always, you don't always know if adult use is going to pass or what's going to happen. But Missouri, we timed it perfectly. We got into the market when it was medical. We were able to operate in medical and get established. And adult use passed, and we were able to launch up and then to really, really strategically take over that market and the category in a really large way that truly positioned the company to catapult forward. And some of that was just luck, right? Having voters approve it. If it had stayed medical, things might have been different. But that was a bit of a gamble. Luckily, it worked out for us. But we really nailed it on that one. And Missouri, that community, we leaned in really heavily to that community. Missouri is an interesting market because it's not dominated by the traditional multi-state operators.
Yep.
So, Good Day Farm and some of the, Bee Leaf and Good Day Farms, Green Light. There's a lot of large folks in there, but they're really isolated to a certain part of the country. And developing those relationships really early on was critically important. But yeah, I'd say Missouri, if I lean into something and say we nailed it, it's Missouri.
Now, I mean, you talked about a couple things there, right? You talked about the early entrance into the market when it's medical, and then also just like how much you invested in it once adult use was there. Which one, I mean, is there one of the two that you think was more pivotal? I mean, obviously you couldn't do it if you weren't already in there.
Right.
But I mean, for people as a takeaway, hey, try and establish yourself sometimes in medical.
Relationship. Yeah. I mean, really, it's investment in the relationships. I mean, getting in early, the timing was critical. But if we hadn't leaned into the relationships to be able to scale, we wouldn't have been able to do what we've done.
Got it. Okay. what are some of the kind of key internal metrics that you look at to measure your success and impact? And
Are we
potentially unorthodox
profitable?
ones. What do
Yeah,
you say?
I mean, are we making money?
Are you making
It
money? All
always
right. No, I
it
mean,
always
it
comes. I
doesn't have
mean,
to be
that's
some
a
convoluted answer.
yeah, I know. I mean, when we're looking at key metrics, I mean, we and I it's funny because you would think that in any industry like that's a growth metric you should be looking at is, are you profitable? Are you making money? And somehow in cannabis that like is overlooked because it's just a land grab of how fast can you grow. You don't have to be profitable. There's more money, just keep growing. And we've not taken that approach. And so we always look at how can we monetize a market in a certain amount of time. We get in, we're lean, we grow. How do we get it to where it can pay for itself and start monetizing, right? And that is a critical metric. Our values, how happy are our people internally?
Yep.
How are we continuing to grow? I mean, we're 300 people now, across 9 states, and we've got products in Canada. So we're a Northern Hemisphere company, and trying to manage that and the culture piece and tracking that. We just did an employee survey and those kind of things. We're really tracking that. I think that's a measurement of success. And then the other thing is kind of how we're growing and the consumer response and the growth and the sell through that we're seeing in the markets that we're in are
Got
big
it. So
growth
the
factors.
traction that the brand is getting in
Yeah,
different
yeah.
places, that's an indicator of that. Is there, do you try and set like a set timeline in terms of which you expect profitability in different markets? Are you flexible about
Yeah.
it because every market's different?
Yeah, every market is different. In the early days, we just cowboyed it. We just went in with what we could and did the best we could, and it was a wing and a prayer. And now we set real budgets and we have actual plans, and we know what we're budgeting something to cost, and we know how many months until we expect for it to start paying for itself, and then being healthy enough to start paying the mothership back for its startup cost.
Got it.
So each state kind of operates as its own company under its own spaceship under the mothership,
Got it.
if that makes sense. So mothership
Any
fund
sci-fi
sponsors
reference is
it.
welcome. Any sci-fi reference is welcome here. So no, I appreciate that. So, but that, I think it's very useful for people to understand that, right? That it's
Yeah.
almost like that they're these separate entities, right? Rather than
Yes.
one whole, right? That you segment the way that you look at the different states and different markets.
Yeah, we're bringing different products in every market too. I mean,
Yep.
we go in and we look at it, we say, wow, this is doing really well. For example, Pennsylvania is a medical market right now. We're hopeful again that this is going to go adult use in the sometime near future. But for right now, it's a medical market. It's a strong medical market. But the products that are on that market and with the state restrictions are drastically different than what you would see in Arizona or Missouri. So creating product offerings for that. We're entering Massachusetts later this year. They have very different product offerings. 50 milligrams is a limit there. So we've got different, just very different product offerings in different markets. And we've got a Big Apple in New York product that's only available there. We have a prickly pear, and it's only available in Arizona. So some fun different things that we've really tried to localize what we're doing.
No, that's great. Now, with your unique position in the industry, what are some of the most interesting things that you see developing in, particular states, perhaps,
Yeah.
or in the industry, as a whole, maybe even outside your sector or something that, you see developing?
I think we're going to continue to see rosin play a bigger and bigger role. I think that's a trend that's really moving forward. I'm really curious to watch and see what's going to happen with Delta 9 and the whole hemp industry,
Yep.
and how the overlap kind of happens. I think there's interesting things that are happening and just happened in Texas with the potential full ban and now
Yep.
restrictions on stuff and I could be wrong, but I predict that we're going to see the some kind of limitation regulation on low dose hemp beverages happen. I don't think they're going to go away. I think it's going to stay here. I think it's going to start to normalize cannabis in the future. I think that's healthy. I don't know where things are going to go for other categories with hemp. I think they're going to be harder to regulate outside of dispensaries. Because the nice thing about the drinks is they can go into liquor stores or be regulated like alcohol. And that's harder to do with gummies and flour or pre-rolls. So I think that's a really interesting sector to see. We're continuing to watch that. We're not in that sector right now. We might be in the near future, but continuing to just kind of wait and watch and see right now.
I think it's obviously a pivotal time with the next iteration of the Farm Bill still, moving along. And
Right.
I personally 100% agree with your take on how this could play out, in terms of, beverages. And I think it's an excellent point, saying that beverages are easier because they could be in liquor stores that are regulated versus the other categories. I think that's something that people do not necessarily give weight to or consider. So I think so I really appreciate that point. Now, what are some of the biggest surprises that you've seen in the industry? Something where you just said to yourself, didn't see that one coming.
Ohio. It's not, I don't want to bash Ohio, but the biggest, like some of the largest challenges that this industry has are outside of our control. It would be one thing if we could just run this industry. I mean, if it was just we have a regulated ingredient and we need to test it and it has to be regulated, we'd be like the pharmaceutical industry, and it would be one thing and we could operate through regular channels. But having every state that has its own regulations, its own set, in Ohio, we can't even give out T-shirts. You can't do any marketing. You have to, if you want to even do budtender training, you have to get it approved by the state, and they have to show what you're doing. So the ability to run the business in some states where you're completely handicapped and blocked, but then you can go 30 miles away and it's a free-for-all, is really, really challenging and becomes really hard to manage. And that's probably the hardest thing that we deal with as a company as we try to scale, is how to manage that, and how to have a unified company front on what we're delivering to consumers, with drastically different regulation and drastically different regulators that don't always have the same intentions with whether or not they support the industry in general.
Got it.
But yeah, so that's the thing. It's like we when you say I didn't see that coming, we really bet on Ohio being another Missouri. It's got the population, it's got the program is set up like that, but it really doesn't have the political support across the board to be able to grow. So it's in this like quasi adult use state right now, and it's made it really challenging for the industry. It's still sitting there kind of floundering a little bit. It's just not, it's not doing well. Meanwhile, Michigan and surrounding states are just, that's where everybody's going. So that's, we didn't see that one coming. We hoped. We still hope.
No,
We believe.
Politics, right?
Politics.
I mean, it's just very, very hard. Even it's hard to, bank on certain things happening on specific timelines because of politics, right?
Yeah.
And you also have certain states where it's like, you get dealt like a curveball, like Minnesota, when the Democrats tricked the Republicans into legalizing hemp products, right? Or Virginia, where things looked good for legalization, and then all of a sudden Republicans came in on the election and are, essentially undermining the legalization that was approved by Democrats. So I completely, I think that, I think to generalize, politics is something that is constantly surprising and makes it difficult to operate in our industry.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yep.
And that's, it's outside of our control, but it's every time I wake up in the morning, I sometimes am like, oh, what's happening now? Right. And sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah.
One day we're going to wake up. One day we're going to wake up and something at a federal level is going to change, and it'll just happen. It'll just happen. It'll be
I
there.
mean, do you have any hopes in terms of Schedule 3? I mean, I just did a deep dive
I've
on,
given up
linking
hope.
up. I think that realistically, Schedule 3 might not happen until the next Democratic administration. And even when that happens, I think that the push for Schedule 3 was very specific to Biden trying to court youth voters when he still thought he was going to be running.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
so I don't know if you have a similar take that, we can't place any weight on Schedule 3 happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I completely agree, and we don't put any weight with how we're operating our company on any changes coming in the near or medium term future. I mean, sometime down the line something will happen, but I don't see it in the near future. I just don't see it happening. But I could be wrong again, right? Like we don't know. We wake up and it's something happened.
Yes, it would take
But
one word from one specific person in
yeah,
this, to make something
right?
happen, right?
Yeah.
Does that person ever say that word, to give the go ahead? So I always like to wrap up. I still have never been able to determine whether or not I want to call it tokerdamus or smokerdamus. So please, bequeath yourself with the right, term in your mind. But, what do you see in the future, some aspect or, the entire industry as a whole, going forward? Picture yourself putting on your wizard cap that's stylized like a joint when
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I partly believe this because I just believe in this industry and I believe in the plan, what we're doing. But I really see the trends of alcohol decline and cannabis uptick happening and continuing to dominate. I see in the future a world where we have regulated hemp products or Delta 9 products, cannabis product, low dose cannabis products on an open market kind of system, similar to the way alcohol is regulated, adults 21 and older, and then a dispensary aspect where that's more like liquor stores where you can get higher dose products, where you can get flour or concentrates or infused pre-rolls or something to that effect. And I see a world where cannabis is truly normalized. I really believe this will happen. I don't exactly know when. It's going to take some movement from the federal level for there to be true acceptance. But I do see it happening, and I see it. It's just a slow. I mean, we're turning a giant ship in the ocean, and we're trying. It's just taking a long time to shift. But I believe it. I think there's movement. I know the industry is tired. It's exhausted. It's been going at it a long time, and initially there was so much hope that there was going to be this booming industry, and it's there's been a lot of expectations that have not come to fruition. And I think there's a lot of debt coming due for a lot of companies, and so a lot of restructuring is happening. But yeah, I'm still very optimistic about it. I think brands are going to continue to dominate. We're going to see more brands, and hopefully a few of them, including ours, I hope, are able to withstand the test of time and become long-term brands that are part of this industry forever, and true CPG brands.
Yes.
And that's my hope, and that's my dream. That's my dream for our company, as I tell our team, is I hope this company, this brand, is able to be here for the long haul.
Yeah, no, I'm similarly optimistic. One thing that I've kind of globbed onto recently is, I had to appear before, community boards in New York arguing for, them to be open to, cannabis, and watching as, the older folks are typically more conservative and have, they were alive for the war on drugs longer, had all these, viewpoints inculcated in them. But then when you look at the stats of the states that come online, this fast growing sector, always is the elderly, right?
Yes.
Because they have the biggest issues with sleep and they have the biggest
Yeah.
issues with pain. And so something like that, is where I'm looking for the similar optimism wherever I could find it. And that's something that makes me feel good. I used to think like, oh, we need one big state to turn or something like a Texas, and that would be like a great, bellwether. But really, I just kind of think that we reached this saturation point where every demographic, is much, is very much in favor of, cannabis because of all the different things that it does. It's not a fair fight, cannabis versus alcohol. It's one
Right.
drug. We're effectively a lot in one
Right.
piece when you count minor cannabinoids and all the different effects that you could have. So Christine, I wanted to thank you so much, for joining. This was really, really, fascinating. Thank you for being here.
Oh, well, it's always great to see you, and this was so much fun. And I look forward to seeing you again. And thanks again for the time.